functioning as intended. So here's the picture of all of that. We have the name field, the version field, a description, main, that's where we're going to be taking our data from, scripts where you can create custom commands to interact with your module, keywords to help people find your module on the website, and so on. So what are some common examples of packages that you have used in your projects? One is express.js. If you created a RESTful API using the Node.js server environment, you've most likely used Express.js. You've also most likely used Mongoose or alternatively MongoDB's direct package if you want to access a MongoDB database. And finally, one that I have personal experience with is Mocha and Chai. These are testing frameworks for JavaScript applications. So the Node Package Manager. This is a package manager for JavaScript applications. It helps automate the process of installing, configuring, and upgrading packages, whether it's your own or someone else's packages. It is composed of the NPM registry. This is the database where all of your packages are being held. It also is composed of an NPM website where you can find documentation, what modules and packages are available for you, and that's at npmjs.org. And finally, it consists of the NPM CLI. So if you ran any commands such as npm install, npm init, and so on, you'll be able to, that's what you interacted with. So here's a picture of the website and one of the modules that I created, DSD Math. Here's a picture of the npm CLI where you can see I ran commands like npm version, npm list, and npm install. So we're going to get into a demo. So I want you to be able to create your own packages from this. We're just going to keep it really simple. Create a module. We're going to create a package.json file, and then we're going to host that on npm from scratch. So the only requirements is that you have Node.js installed. As with Node.js, npm's automatically installed. So here's the example I used earlier, but we want to create that from scratch. So we'll be using my package, which is an empty folder. Let's create a file. Let's do index.js. We'll just have one function in here for time's sake. Function add one. And so take in a number, and it will add one to that number and return the result. Let's create our module.exports object and add in that function as a property. So once we've done that, we want to use the npm init. So there's two ways you can create a package.json. You can use the command npm commit npm init, which will ask you all of the questions, or you can create the package.json from scratch on your own. So let's do it this way. We'll create our own package name. So DSD my package. Leave the default version, skip the description, leave the default entry point. The only time you need an entry point is when it's not index.js. Otherwise, it automatically knows where to grab your data from. Get through this. Is this okay? Just hit enter. And now you'll see the package.json was generated. You just move this inside of here because I didn't cd into the right directory before running this. And let's be sure to cd into that directory this time. Okay, Now, this is a really easy process. After doing that, the only thing you have to do is enter the command npm publish, and it's already up there. So let's do that. Npm publish. Wait for it to finish, and there's your package name, DSD my package at version 1.0.0. You can check the website to see that it's up there. The other one, DSD my package. And while it's loading, okay, we'll skip that for now and go on to importing that so we can test it on our own and ensure that it's working as intended. Just create a new folder for that test. Create a test file, test.js, and we need to run the command npm install followed by our package name to download that from the npm repository. Huh? Good catch. I forgot to change directories again. Okay. npm install DSD my package. Let's see if it's there now. So we have a node modules folder, and there's our package with our code that we wrote in it. So now the world can use our packages, use our modules in their own applications. So let's make sure that this is working as intended. So all we have to do is import it first. Const math is equal to require followed by the path, or, well, you don't have to use a path if you take it from npm. You just have to use the package name. It automatically knows where to get that using their node modules. And we will print out the result of add 1 to 2. Log math.add 1 to. And you see we get the correct result. Well, that wraps up the demo. Are there any questions? Actually, yeah. So let's go back to what we were looking at. Right here, we can see what code is in the registry. Click on code, view index.js, and our code is listed up there for everyone to use. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions?
I have a quick question. Are there any security mechanism? Anyone upload a package or like for any user?
You didn't create NPM. NPM is the thing.
No, I know, but I'm saying like, for example, anyone can publish anything, right? There any like review processes, like when you publish a package?
As far as I know, there aren't any review processes on this level. There is a public NPM registry and there's a private NPM registry. What I imagine is that when you host it privately, your company has the power to decide what goes up there, when it's approved and when it's not approved. So we would have to look into that more to answer that correctly.
I have the major issues with people updating widely dependent upon packages, and it creates disasters for many companies.
Yes, you had a question?
Yeah, there are third-party services that try and provide packages. And you do a private registry, socket.dev, or Snake. That's kind of ones that create the supply chain. Like you can add an additional authentication so they don't authorize two-factor on. To try and address it.
Were those socket what?
Socket.dev.
And so someone from the audience said there are third-party applications that are responsible for making this review process so people can't upload to widely used NPM packages with versions that aren't approved. Was there another question?
Yeah, so, yeah, you saw this.
No, you can actually, you can install it using Yarn.
So my question is, assuming, so are there ways to like unpublish your package or like from the, just happen to sign on that?
Right. And so someone asked, are there ways to remove your package from the registry? So yes, if you go into settings, there you would have to log in using your password, and then you would have the option to delete it. It's very similar to the process of deleting a repository on GitHub. All right.
Good job.
Well, thank you, everyone.
All right. Excellent. Yeah, that, oh, it's, you know, it's pretty. All right, so. Sharing, perfect. The, all right, y'all. So next up, we have Daniel Scott, who is a senior, a lead tech educator. Is that the title?
Lead software engineering instructor.
Lead. We have Daniel, who is a lead software engineering instructor as well as an entrepreneur, giving his talk on JavaScript.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, start, let's bring a little round of applause to Summer and Joseph. That's the presentation. That was actually a really good segue that Joseph, with Joseph's presentation gave, because we're actually going to look at a Node.js / Express application today. I'm actually going to be showcasing something related to web application security, more specifically, command injection. Who here has heard of command injection before? So quite a few hands raised. Could someone give me just a very brief explanation of what command injection is? Go for it.
Accepted on the other end, I submit that, but because of the way that I did it, I escaped what you intended for me to enter, and I have now busted whatever was designed up back.
Love that.
Am I close?
You're very close. You're very close. That wasn't too bad. So let's actually summarize that really quick. Command injection happens whenever a malicious actor attempts to manipulate a web application with the intent on manipulating how that web application executes system level commands on a host server. So there are some web applications that are capable of accessing a file system. That's what that type of attack attempts to do. So this may not be a very common attack, but it's serious enough that I wanted to do this presentation with the hopes of bringing awareness to web application security, especially to all my aspiring software engineers. And who here is an aspiring software engineer? Should be most of you all. Don't you aspire to engineer software every day? All right. So there's probably never going to be a time where we know everything, right? We're always going to be learning something in this industry. So let me just break down what's happening here. Right now, you see that we have an application that I have modeled after your run-of-the-mill FTP client. Can someone give me an example of what an FTP client is? Right, okay, so someone had mentioned the meaning behind FTP. It stands for File Transfer Protocol. I'm sorry? A file manager, yeah, that's a really good example. Some other examples out there might be a content management system for a website. You might have a file sharing system for sharing files between different systems or different users. You might also have a website, or sorry, a web application that helps transfer files from one system to another for the purpose of backup. No matter the case, this actually is going to mimic some of that functionality. More specifically, it's going to allow us to inspect the contents of a folder. So let me show you some of the functionality that it has. And by the way, I built this specifically for this presentation, so it doesn't have a lot of CSS. Actually has no CSS. So it's looking pretty 1997 right now. Actually, I think websites back in 1997 looked a little bit better than this. So right here, as you can see, I / which basically represents the root of the folder that this application manages. And when I type that in and press the search button, you can see that it gives us access to the contents of that folder. You can see that we have a few subdirectories in here. What if I wanted to see the contents of one of those? So I'm going to go ahead and see what's inside of user info. When I type the search button, you can see that it gives me access to some of those files. So we're getting somewhere, right? We can see some of the functionality, but now I'm going to try to demonstrate what command injection is. To do this, I'm going to try to fuzz the application by providing some arbitrary data. Let me show you how I'm going to do this. I'm going to type that / command again, but this time I'm going to append an additional command by adding a semicolon. And you can see I've actually made quite a few attempts based on the autocomplete here. But I'm going to run the ls command. Someone here remind me, what does the ls command do in a Unix shell? It lists everything, exactly. So why don't we try to list everything at the root of the system root. So when I run this command, oh no, that's pretty bad. So now you can see that I'm able to not only access the contents of the folder that this application manages, I'm also able to access the contents of the system root. That's actually very, very bad, because what if I were to do something like this? I'm going to run something very similar as I did before, but this time I'm going to run this command. Oh no. Okay, so I'm not going to do this. What would happen? Exactly. So I'm not going to do that. So yes, this is a very serious issue that we have here. Why don't we take a look at the code that is responsible for running this application? So I was so excited when Joseph gave his talk because it was such a great segue. What we're looking at right here is your typical Node.js / Express web application. You can see it, I've imported a few dependencies. This one is actually using something called exec. This is available through a built-in API that comes with Node. This allows us to spawn a shell and run arbitrary commands directly into the operating system. Basically, as if I were to pop a shell open, run commands directly. This is actually a really dangerous piece of functionality, because take a look at how I'm using it. If we go to the route handler that is handling submit that, you can see that to execute the ls command followed by a file path, and all I'm doing is just appending whatever the user inputs at the very end. And then of course that will go ahead and do its process. I have a callback function which then takes that input, does a little bit of formatting. I got some error handling in there, and then it goes ahead and sends a response back to the client. So very simple stuff. However, in addition to using the exec function, which by the way is very dangerous, there's something very important that I'm also missing. Can anyone tell me what else am I missing here? Something very important to web application security. Input validation. Yes, input validation. Also data sanitization, right? There's nothing here protecting us from any file path irregularities or anything else that could possibly protect us against directory traversal attacks or anything like I was doing earlier, right? Where I was able to append additional commands. So this application's totally exposed, and we're not going to get very far with this. Our client's going to be very upset with us, and they're probably never going to hire us ever again. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to go over a solution for this. I would have loved to do this as a code along, but for the essence of time, I went ahead and prepared a solution for us. So as you can see at the very top, I have imported, instead of the exec functionality, I'm using something called exec file. Exec file and exec are almost exactly the same, except exec file allows me to separate concerns. I'm able to separate the command from the arguments that are provided to that command. This allows us to have a lot more control over how we're going to be executing those commands in the shell. So one other dependency that I'm also using is something called path. This is another built-in Node API, and it allows us to resolve file paths dynamically. So let me show you what we're doing here. So we're capturing user input as per usual, but the first block of code that you see right here is actually performing a type of data validation. We're ensuring that the provided input includes certain characters, and if it doesn't include those characters, we're going to immediately reject that request and send back a response that just tells the client that we got an invalid file path that was entered. The other thing that I'm also doing is I'm performing a type of data sanitization. Path.normalize is going to go ahead and build our file path, but in addition to that, it's also going to remove certain characters that are suspicious in nature. Let me see if I can scroll over really quick. Certain characters that are suspicious in nature, such as, let's say I was trying to do a directory traversal attack. We're going to ensure that we can't have any redundant forward slashes or any dots that shouldn't be there. So that's basically what that's doing. It's going to filter that out. And if that all works out, right, it's going to try to resolve that path. It will go ahead and return to us the expected response. However, if that fails, then we have a fallback. And as you can see, we do have some error handling in there. Let me see here. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I'm gonna actually skip forward a little bit because I do want to show you what this exec file functionality is doing. As you can see, as opposed to the exec function, this one's actually separating the command, the ls command, and it's separating that from the actual argument. As you can see, with this separation concerns, we're able to maintain a lot more control over how we implement this. And that's pretty much it. Now, keep in mind, this is a very watered down approach. This does not account for everything, right? There's still more things that could be done, but for the purposes of simplicity, I just wanted to show you an example. So before we wrap up, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into my integrated terminal. I'm going to shut down the current node process, and I'm going to go ahead and run my solution code. And I should be able to just go back to the client and try to do the same thing as I did before. Well, I'm not going to try and delete the system root, but I'm going to go ahead and try to run an arbitrary unauthorized command. So let's go ahead and see if we can run ls / again. And as you can see, it immediately picks up on an issue, and it graciously tells the client that they've done something they weren't supposed to do. So there you have it, everyone. That right there, hopefully will bring about some awareness to the importance of web application security. One quick thing I will leave you with is I today actually put together a full write-up of this presentation that you all are more than happy to, or more welcome to take a look at. And if you want to capture this QR code, By scanning that, it's about a 50-50 chance that it's going to introduce a virus on your mobile device. But by scanning this QR code, this will actually take you to the page where you can subscribe to my newsletter. I plan to post articles like this on a regular basis. So that's pretty much it. I leave you with that. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, I welcome the next speaker.
Awesome. Testing 1, 2, 3. You hear me okay? Can you hear? Awesome. So speaker now is Ron. Fun fact, I actually met Ron. We're both on I guess, a committee for Collins College, helping them out with their programs. Ron is also an engineering manager for 7-Eleven. So Ron.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Dagdag, and today I will be talking about prompt engineer and the AI agents in JavaScript. I don't think I had the sound, but it should be okay. Yeah, the sound is not working, but it's all right. So prompt engineer and the AI agents in JavaScript. So my name is Ron Dagdag. I am an R&D engineering manager at 7-Eleven. And also I'm a 7th-year Microsoft AI MVP. And the best way to contact me is through LinkedIn. So if you can add me on LinkedIn, yeah, and that would be a good place. So today I'll be talking about what is prompt engineering. And has anyone here, before I start, have used ChatGPT? Oh, wow, everyone have used it every day, like to help them program. And if you're not using it, you're losing out, right? Use it. These are tools that you can use to learn, to understand the new technologies. And so today I'll be talking about ChatGPT, but in terms of prompt engineering and then the AI agents. And then I'll do a little bit of demo and how do you use AI responsibly. Okay, let's start with that. So prompt engineering. What is prompt engineering? Has anyone here used Google? Hopefully everyone here, raise your hand and you used Google. Through time, as a developer, you learn how to Google stuff, right? We become good at Googling stuff, right? If you're a developer, you know where to go and what to find, but you Google it first, right? And that's pretty much our job. That's what we do. Prompt engineering is a technique in how to improve AI response quality in generating these AI models. It's pretty much figuring out the best way to get the right response using these ChatGPT or this generative AI. So it really involves in refining the questions you ask on AI, because that's the key. Asking the right questions, you get the right answers, right? And there are different types of prompts in prompt engineering. First is we call it zero shot, which is the things that you ask, the normal things that you ask on ChatGPT, you type in, and then it would reply back to you, okay? Another one is you prompt it with examples. Sometimes you call it one shot, few shots, or multi-shots, meaning you write the question or whatever you want to, and then you give it examples, right? It helps AI reply back and try to get the right context. At the end of the day, these generative AI are what we call, it's autocomplete. Autocomplete items, right? It always knows it tries to understand what's next, what's the next word, and what's next word. It's trying to identify what would make sense based from the previous context. And then there's the chain of thought. Chain of thought is you give it a question, and then you tell it, give me the step-by-step answers or reflect on this, right? Let's think it step by step. It prompts AI or helps the AI to be able to kind of walk through like, okay, in order to get to the solution, I'll give you like line by line, response to it. And I'll show you a little bit more of example once I do the demo. So like I said, the real world demo is, Google search. That would be the easiest way to connect to this. So prompt engineering, we already know. And now we'll start talking about AI agents. AI agents are, in terms of OpenAI, has anyone heard of OpenAI? If you've heard of ChatGPT, most likely you've used OpenAI. OpenAI is the one that is responsible to give you ChatGPT. Of course, it's not just one. There's also other large language models that's available there. There's one that Facebook uses, is Llama. And then, of course, for Google, there's Bard. Has anyone used Bard here? That's integrated with Google. So that's another one that you can use. And OpenAI GPT, or Generative Pre-trained Transformer, has an API that we can start calling. So as a JavaScript developer, we love API. We talked about NPM packages and all these different things. It's calling all these different APIs, right? So how do you train? So OpenAI GPT is trained to understand natural language and code. In the world of JavaScript, there's always going to be new framework out there for these OpenAI or these large language model or just GPTs. There's a open source framework that is available out there called LangChain. LangChain can be used to simplify the creation and development of applications that's powered by a large language model. It helps us, and then of course, LangChain is not just in Python, because originally it was written in Python. It is also in JavaScript. So for us to be able to use it, we can use LangChain JavaScript in order to create applications. And so what are AI agents, you ask? AI agents are a way to use large language model in order to make a decision of what are the chain of actions, meaning you use AI as a reasoning agent to be able to create the steps for you in order to build some actions. And I'll talk more about that on this demo. Are you all ready? Yes. Okay. So let's do that. And it is also on my GitHub if you want to see it later on, and I'll post that again. Okay. So let's dive in if we have time. Okay. Make sure I move this out of the way. It's the wrong screen. There you go. So it is on my GitHub. So there are different Node packages, different dependencies. I'm going to be using Node in order to program this. These are the dependencies that we have. We're going to be using LangChain, and that is the current version, and also OpenAI as our backend. In this case, because of the other demos, I have all the other dependencies here, but the main critical ones that I'm going to be talking about today is LangChain, OpenAI, and okay, so just to visualize it, so OpenAI, if you go to openai.com, there's the ChatGPT that you're already familiar with, and you can try it out. But there's also APIs that you can use. So you can, once you log in, you can actually get you can go through the API, and then you may have need to sign up, but you need your API key in order to call this. And you can call your, to do that, you can get your API keys here, generate it, and then you'll be able to use it for your application. So if you're going to try the one that I have right now for package JSON, you need your API key in order to use it. Okay, so in order to include it into your application, you specify the open API key, you type in your key here, and then you're good to go. You create your .env file. So in terms of basics and how you would use this is without LangChain. What you would do is there's a OpenAI NPM package that you incorporate, and then you pass in and call this create chat completion, where you specify the model that you wanted to use. So there's different types of models that OpenAI can that you can use, and then you can get the contents. Like in this case, right? I'm gonna ask who wrote Harry Potter series and what is the real name and why chose that name. Okay, so we're gonna try that. So that is my prompt, that is my question, and I'm calling it with this template right here, the prompt template. So prompt template is a way to tell the GPT to say, okay, it's called system templates in order to identify what are the things that this GPT can do. Okay, so let's try to run this and it'll make sense. Do that. So basics. Okay. Where is my prompt here? Okay, there you go. I can't see where I'm typing, so that's why I need to move this one right here. So node 00 basics. So what this one is doing right now, it is, of course, live demos. So it'll run. Okay, let's see if we'll run the other one. Node 01 basic first chain. Okay, so it looks like it did run this first chain, which is the one that uses LangChain. So LangChain kind of simplifies the prompts and so it has these OpenAI and the prompt template and then this LLM chains. So these are some of the things that you can do in order to pass in and create the call. So let's try to do that. So 01 first chain, it's the same question, who wrote Harry Potter series book and what's the name, and it'll give me the result. See, and the result is J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter series book. Her real name is Joanne Rowling. So it replied back just like as you're using ChatGPT. Does that make sense? See how a few lines of code, you'll be able to call ChatGPT or to call, you make your own GPT, right? So what is the power of LangChain? What makes it different from just calling just an API, right? So one of the good examples of it is what we call chains, right? So there's different types of chains in LangChain. So there's, in this case, a simple sequential chain. So you can have two chains connected to each other, and then it will give you a response. So the response of the first chain, you can pass it to another chain, and then it will give you a response. So in this case, we have a response template 1 where you are a Harry Potter's expert in Harry Potter series, given the name of the spell. It is your job to explain what the spell does, and notice how I'm specifying I'm trying to prompt, in this case, the spell name, right? And then how it would respond back. So spell and then description. So it kind of gives you a one-shot description of that. And then on the next one is that you have a response template 2, where you're creating another prompt that says, given a spell, you're gonna write a story around that spell. So first, generate a spell, right? Given a spell, describe what that spell is. The second one is, create a story around that spell. So what I'm doing here is I have two chains and I'm connecting it with each other and then calling them as one after the other and getting the response back. Any questions so far? Yes, sir.
So you finish abstracting complexes and you get to manipulate the result base.
Yes, yes. So the result of the first call of the API, which is, think about it, you're creating all these mini agents or mini robots, right? That can call this API, it would respond back, and then you pass it to another robot, and then it would just process that, and then it'll give you the results. So in this case, right, it did call the first one. It says, in this case, I ask it, spell Alamahora. Okay, that's the spell name. That's what I passed it in. And then it described, hey, what is Alamahora, right? What is that spell? What is it for? And then it created a story around that spell. So let's go to the bottom of it. It'll give you gives you all the step by step on what it did. And in this case, the story follows a group of adventurers who are on the quest to find the following artifact hidden away in a secret location. The only way, blah, 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 artifact, to use Alamahora spell to open the door. And it kind of gives a story about obstacles and challenges and different adventures using that spell. Isn't that cool, right? It created from one to the other, right? And you can create all these different bots, right? And not just chat bots, different bots that specifically of the things it can do, and then you pass it to another bot and specifically. Yes, so it's actually in terms of cost, it's actually cheap, but it's different. It really depends on the type of model are you using, right? So if you're using the latest and greatest, that's the most expensive one. And they also usually calculate it per token, right? So the number of tokens, or sometimes they call it number of words, but it's not really, because sometimes they combine it. But the older the model is, the cheaper that you get. So if you have your base model, Da Vinci 2, it's really, really cheap to use those, but it gets expensive as if you use the latest and greatest model.
There's like a 90-day free, right? I made one.
Yeah, so you can actually use that too. Yeah. Yeah. So there's also a sequential chain, which is you can have these different ones where you write a review. Let's see, that's how it goes, right? So you have a review chain, and then based from that review chain, you have a comment chain, and it summarizes the comment and it translates it to a different language, those kind of things, right? So you can have all these specific bots that can actually does the translation, that does the summary and all these, and then based from that, pass in variables from one chain to the other. So that's what's the interesting part of this.
When it comes to chains, you have to be able to believe the response is satisfactory.
That's correct, yes.
You have, or else it'll, like a game of telephone, that it'll turn into something that you completely.
That's correct, that's correct. So that's the key here, is the prompt engineering side, right? It's asking the right questions so you'll have the right response for that one.
So would you want to, like, because which ones are prompts, like, I guess, templates or syntax?
Mm-hmm.
Break that, I guess, sentence earlier down and see different, I guess, a map of what they are.
Yeah, so here's another example. Sometimes people need to visualize what it can do, right? So this is an LLM chain, sometimes visualizing, right? And then in order to create this chain, I need two things. I need the language model. So in this case, I'm using OpenAI as my language model, and I need the API, and there's parameters for that API. And then there's the prompt template. the prompt template determines what are the, what are the instructions that the bot would do so that it would respond back. In this case, you give it you give it the name, it will insert it on that product, right? So what is a good name for a company that makes products? So it kind of limits what it can do, right? And so if I place here something, so in this case, give me a word. Huh? Cheese? Okay, cheese. So now it started to give me response, and it only knows how to make a good name for a company name for cheese that makes cheese. So it didn't give me the definition, what is cheese? It just gives me, these are the company names that might be possible for you. So it limits the things that it makes it dumb, right? So it limits things that what it can do and what you can. So the cool thing also is that you can create indexes for these. Indexes are a way where you can load the text file. So in this case, I'm loading a text file. This is the Harry Potter Sorcerer's Stone, right? That is the text file. And this is the manuscript. So it loads that text file. I split it into smaller chunks, and it has on those chunks, it overlaps. Okay. So why am I doing this? Because I'm going to split this document into smaller documents, and then I'm going to use OpenAI embeddings. Embeddings is a way to be able to convert these tokens or this text into something that OpenAI can understand in terms of numbers, right? It's like a binary number. So think about it, it's like a dictionary. You're assigning each letter to, a number, right? Not each word to a number, or each concept. At the end of the day, each concept is assigned to a number somewhere in OpenAI. So once it does that, I can store that into a vector store or the vector database. A vector database allows me to be able to make it searchable. Okay, so I split the documents, I store it in a vector store. Okay, and so that's what it's doing right now. And just want to let you know what that document looks like. There's different, I don't know how many lines of pages are these, but it split them up and it stored it to a file using this index. So now that I have an index, I can run this retrieval QA chain. And what this one does is it loads the data from the embeddings database. In this case, I'm using this vector store called FAISS, FAISS, which is a vector store that that I can retrieve it, have an index in memory, and then I can call, and it would only respond on the contents of that book or that manuscript. So think about it in terms of if people are looking for a job right now, you can create your own bot based from your resume, and whoever can interview, they can interview your resume or whatever, right? It's something that so this case, right? Who used the Alamahora spell and where is it used, right? In this case, the spell was used in Gamekeeper's Hut. It only knows that it was used during that time. And interesting part here is I can say, what is today? Okay. And it says Monday. Well, it's not Monday. That's kind of dumb. Why did it say it's Monday? So just to give you a result, like, let's see, what is today? It actually can, let's see if I can go back here. I can give it a little bit of, what you call these, to make it, let's see if I can find it. Find the word Monday. See how it says there, today is Monday, it's Monday, and it knows that, it's in that document. There's no Tuesday on this document, so well, I guess there is one, but it's found it or something, but for some reason it thinks that it's Monday because of that too. All right. that is it for my presentation. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
We did have one request, if you were to share your GitHub link in the chat. so
Okay,
that people
yes.
online can
I
follow with it.
will. Yeah, if you can. I'll go back to the presentation again,
Yeah,
and that might be better.
awesome. And so next up, we have Dennis Garcia. Right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Right after that. Well, put you on. Oh, get you in the- oh, yeah, you need the pen.
Yeah. Let's go. We spent 2 hours. Improving. Yeah.
All right.
I don't think it's.
Don't you share my video? No. Share my screen. Oh, there we go. And then more. There's a way to hide this. Okay. Test, test, 1, 2, 3. Test, test, test. Let's see here. All right, hold on 1 second. There it is. Which one am I sharing? Share screen. There it is. There. All right, can they see me okay? We're good? All right, good. All right, my name is Dennis Garcia. I'm a software engineer, full stack developer, blog writer, mentor. I've been a software developer for nearly 14 years, and my current weapons of choice right now are SQL, C#, and React. As a quick plugin, I do have a blog site called Get Black Box Solutions, where you can find articles like this one tonight and the previous one I did there, and as well as my LinkedIn and the GitHub I'm about to share here, and my Twitter. So tonight we're talking about mocking data. And before we do that, we're going to start going over the process of what it takes to go through a project, how we fire up a project from the very beginning to the end of the process. And I promise you it's not going to take very long, so we're just going to kind of just run through it. So usually when a current project comes in, and from a very high level overview, we get a request in, and what we need to do is go through this process right here of planning. Once planning goes through, the next step after that would be back-end development. And then we can finally start into the front-end development. And after that comes QA testing once everything comes together, and then we can start deployment. So tonight, I kind of want to focus on the back-end development and front-end development, and kind of start at the project planning level right here. So as you can see, this requires the back-end to start working on their items before the front-end development does. So, and that would put the front-end development in a stalled state. But what if the front end could work in parallel with the back end? If there was a way for a team to agree on a standard signature during planning, then this could be very well possible. With open API specification incorporated into any team structure, the team can agree on delivering a language agnostic specification and for describing APIs. However, the topic over open API is a little bit beyond this presentation. So let's just say during project planning, we can agree on some type of standardization. And what would that standardization look like? Well, with an open API, oh, one back, sorry. All right, here we go. With OpenAPI, we can have a similar document like this where we can describe our data. We have the ID, the first, last name, and Twitter account, avatar, and created at. And let's say if we were to kind of condense this to a payload that the front end can use. So with that payload, that gives us the ability to work something on the front end. So this is where mock data comes to the rescue. We're going to take that simple OpenAPI signature and we're going to make a JSON payload off of it. And then we're going to use the tutorial that comes out of React Router version 6. And then we're going to use the browser DB. And then we're going to use the JSON server with Faker.js. And then we're going to use a client called Macoon, which is going to allow us to separate the concerns of the API entirely. So let's go ahead and step right into that. Going to give me 1 second here. I got to share my screen differently. Okay. Give me a second here. Technical difficulties here. So sorry, 1 second. Trying to kill my presentation right now. Alrighty. Yes, sir. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so the first demo we have right here is like I said, React Router, and what we're using right here for the mock data is a thing called local DB. And if I run this application right here, npm start, and we're going to specifically go into development. Actually, we're just going to npm start. Let's see what the package.json file is. Okay, npm start. And this is going to fire up the application. And this is going to actually also use the local DB to store our information at. And once this goes, we can show you, I can show you what the console for the looks like. So here we go. Just give it a second. So as you can see, we have two names right here, Johnny Cash and Mickey Mouse. And we look at our developer tools here. And this bar is really annoying. Console here and go into application. And we can see that our key value pairs are right here. So this, as you can see, this is storing the data in here. And as you can see, this is kind of the signature that we're expecting here. So we have the avatar, the created at first, ID, last name and notes, and Twitter account. And if you can see here, we can actually add a new one to this. Add a couple more. And say we're going to add Minnie Mouse and just save that. And we can look at the developer tools for that. And we can see key value pairs are not being updated here. So let's refresh that. You see the 4 items are being added there. So this is great, but the problem is that we're going to have, we want a way to see how we can populate this side over here with many items. How would it look like aesthetically? So let's just open that up by quitting this right quick here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run JSON server, and that's going to fire up our mock data and using Faker as well. So if we do npm run JSON, or actually run start JSON. This is going to do two things. It's going to fire up the JSON server, and it's going to fire up our client. And as you can see below here, we do have our JSON server fired up in the background. And if we go to it, to the front end, and we refresh it, we still have our old data. Well, why is that? Okay, so the reason for that is because we haven't pointed to the right directory. So we just need to look at our context right here, and we need to take it off the forge and implement the JSON server. So we'll update this right quick. And as you can see, the simple, just switching these over, since it's been abstracted out, is pretty simple here. And comment those out. And this can be actually driven by environment variables too. We'll save that. We're gonna have to fire up the server again. Oops, wrong one. That's the right one. Let's make sure. Start JSON. Okay. And then we have here some fake data on the side using Faker. So any one of these we can just look at, and you can see it's populated with data. These are all fake data right here using Faker. And how that is done, if we open up the mock data here, we can see that using Faker, we're able to loop through this and populate a set amount of data here. And the cool thing about this is we can actually even see more of what this would look like. If we put 100 on here, what that would look like. And we can open the side right here. But in order to do that, we're going to have to stop the server and restart it again. So let me do that right quick. And this is going to give us 100 results for the side. Now, this is kind of tedious right here, just having to set this all up. You have to set the directory up for mock data. You have to set the server JS up. And there's actually got to be a better way to do this, right? So let's talk about the application called Macoon. And right quick, you can see that there's 100 users here now. All these are fake. And we can go through any one of these and just update it. And it's going to be updated right there. And if we navigate to the page here, let's see here. Wish there was an easier way to, here we go. We'll go to localhost 3001 API context. You can see our JSON server is working in the background here, populated with all the JSON data we needed. And the cool thing about this is that it works with CRUD operations, so we can create ones, we can read, we can update, and we can delete. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and close that server down, and we're going to talk about Macoon. Now, the cool thing about Macoon is that it actually takes the Open API. So once we design the Open API during planning, we can actually incorporate that into this and run it from right from here. So if we do that, we can just launch this, but as you can see, it's going to run off of 3001. So what we need to do right quick is just go ahead and kill this site over here and then open Macoon and then run it. It's going to ask us if it's okay to do that. Allow access. And now Macoon's running in the background with, as you can see, that there's CRUD operations being performed here as well. And again, if we open up the web browser, you can see that the data is being driven there with Macoon. And the cool thing about this is that in data, it can be actually, we can use a kind of a syntax mustache syntax to deliver Faker as well. So we can just put this as Faker right here, run it, and we got fake data. And then this will allow us to do CRUD operations as well without having to worry about firing up the JSON server. So if we look at over here and we just run npm start, oops, star, run npm start. I just npm run, right? npm start, there we go. And then we look at the React app, we have data right here. So this is all the information that's coming from the back end right here from Macoon. And then just like this one, we can also edit this one. Oh my gosh, Totally random. So this is actually grabbing random pictures off the internet from GitHub account. So these are all GitHub just randomly pulled. As you can see, this is interesting what it grabbed. And this is Makun working with Faker.js to grab these fake accounts here. And we can, like I said, can use CRUD operations. We can delete stuff off of here. And that's all I have. Any questions? No? Good.
Let me try. So if I were now, hey, I'll do that 1 second and make sure. Can they hear me? All right. And so from here, okay. So if that's the case, oops. So now I can share this. I'm going to give. All right. So they can see that, but that's the wrong screen to share. Sorry. It's okay, share that now. I thought that'd be funny to pop up. Right? It killed it, right? All right. So let me go ahead and now present, hiding this. Present there. And so then here, hey, it worked. Okay. Hey, you know, once in a while, I feel like I know how to use a computer, you know? It's amazing. It's amazing. Okay. So, okay, perfect. All right, we're good. I won't be able to see the chat in this window, but I'm sure you can keep track of that. All right. Whoops. Let me make sure my phone is on Do Not Disturb. Okay. All right. All right, everybody. I'm the last speaker. Sorry to disappoint, but hopefully, you know, I do a really good job with this. If I don't, I'm sure Twitter will let me know. You know, I'm pretty good about that. This is a talk I actually gave at Render ATL. I rarely reuse talks, but I thought this would be a really good talk considering the topic. Hey, I know you. All right, so this talk is all about 10-stack query. And to be honest, I got the idea for talking about this at a previous talk. Summer was actually talking about Redux. And it seemed that quite a few people were not necessarily super in-depth familiar with state management, or they kind of understood state management to a certain degree. But I felt it would be really great to kind of offer a different tool, which is something that I've actually recently gotten accustomed to this year. And I've become a massive fan TanStack query, or also known as React query. And especially if you're in the React ecosystem, React query is definitely a more common term for it. But the reason why there was a name change for it was it was created just for React, but now that has changed and it's branched out quite a bit. If you're using Redux strictly for your state management, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice. And I'm going to kind of dive deep into that and explain a lot of the reasoning as to why. But one big reason in particular is, and Tanner Lindsley is the creator of React query or TanStack query, and he actually said this great where it clicked for me. He's like, you know, there's two different areas of state that he considers. One is global state, which is, you know, kind of the default when you look at tools like Redux, where you just kind of throw all of your state into one generalized area, kind of like the exact equivalent of like the junk drawer in your house. You just throw pretty much everything in there, right? That's kind of, you know, using Redux in that respect. Or you can separate it between global state and client-side state. And so, or server-side state and client-side state. So now you have two different areas where you can access that information. Depending on your use case, it may be slightly different. We'll kind of dig deep into that. And for me, you know, my specialization now in development has revolved all around sales funnels of websites. That's pretty much become my niche, whether I realize it or not. But every company that hires me, that's where they end up throwing me. And so I guess I'm pretty good at it. And I've become very obsessed with improving user experiences, right? When it comes to, and there's a big reason for that, especially when you talk about the sales funnel. You have people that are trusting you to a certain degree and they're coming to you for whatever service or item that you're providing them, right? That degree comes with a level of trust and responsibility to make sure that you're delivering the right product the right way, and you're being very honest and you're delivering the right information. Well, if you're not utilizing your state properly, there may be variables that change, and due to the delay in state, you may not necessarily be presenting the correct information. So it's almost a responsibility upon yourself to make sure you're presenting the right information at the right times. And that's honestly where if you've seen some of my earlier talks, I'm a very big believer that trust is giving the right information at the right time, giving the right responses. And so sometimes we get an error response. We don't necessarily tell the user that, but they don't necessarily know what happens. Or we may hide certain information, which they find out later de facto, and they're pretty upset with the process. And so when it comes to the user experience, one problem that I've had, especially last year specifically, I kind of went through this seesaw kind of situation where I was like, sometimes when I look at things for user experience, I feel like I'm taking on more effort, more work, more tools on the developer side, and my developer experience starts to suck. Or if I start prioritizing my developer experience, oftentimes I'm creating things where it may make a slower application or a worse user experience. TanStack query is one of the tools that I use it all the time now, but it's become one of the things where it prioritizes the user experience without suffering on the developer side, in fact, improving the developer experience. And because of that, it's a tool that I utilize. I work at a Fortune 500 company, and we utilize it throughout the company now. It's become a very big tool within our repertoire. And I think you're going to find a lot more organizations going that route as well. And so we can kind of jump into this. And so some of the key takeaways. My hope by the end of this talk, you know, we're going to kind of speed run it a little bit, is number one, what is TanStack query and the benefits? How to use queries. We're going to go over data fetching, refetching, mutation, cache, and cache invalidation. And for some people, especially maybe if you're new to state management or new to the React ecosystem at all, you may be slightly unfamiliar with browser caching and how that works. One of the cool things with React query in particular is it handles that automatically for you. So you don't necessarily need to be a genius in this, but it'll do a lot of that functionality for you, keeping it very simplistic and easier for you to get these things done. So a couple things about me. I'm Danny Thompson. I'm currently a software developer on the commerce team at AutoZone. My priorities are AutoZone.com and AutoZonePro.com. We've built an amazing website as far as I'm concerned. It's constantly improving, where our focus has gone from, you know, trying to sell the most amount of stuff to make sure that we're building trust with our customers for longevity. And I mean, the site by itself now at this point, it's generating millions and millions of dollars a day. So tons of traffic, and we're learning a lot through that process. I am a community builder. I've built communities all over the world. I was originally a leader in Memphis, Tennessee, where I lived. I moved to Dallas about a year and a half ago, and we evolved Free Code Camp Dallas into Dallas Software Developers, which is the community that you're at today. I also help out with communities everywhere else, wherever there's a way that I can help others. I try to continue to do that. I also run my mouth a lot on social media. If you don't follow me on social media, I honestly don't blame you. You're probably doing yourself a service at that point instead of a disservice. Going from there, what is TAN stack query? I know that picture looks amazing, but what is TAN stack query? So let's kind of break down into the first key takeaway that I want you to have. So TAN stack query is a state management tool that requires 0 dependencies, which is a big deal, right? So it's not taking a ton of time to get it up and going. You're not going to have to go through a bunch of installs. To be honest, you could get it up and running in 2 npm installs, but 3 is probably going to have you in a very good situation with all the tools that you need available to yourself. They also just recently released version 5 of TAN stack query, so they're constantly iterating upon it. I kind of already discussed this before with the client side versus server side. With client, you're prefetching the data yourself, or you could prefetch the query on the server side, dehydrate your cache, and then rehydrate it on the client side. Now, React query, or I'm going to probably constantly refer to it as React query instead of TAN stack query, because that's how I think about it throughout the day. But React query in particular, it's very good about not telling you how you must do things. It doesn't necessarily care how you fetch your data. In particular, it doesn't care if you're using like Axios or Fetch. It's not opinionated in that respect, where other tools may dictate how you must do things. For me, that's a very big value add in particular, because honestly, oftentimes there are tools that may tell you to do something in a way that you may not necessarily want to do it, or you may have to adopt your solution into their metrics or their framework. That's not the case when it comes to React query in particular. You can kind of do things on your terms. Did I just close that? Whoops, I really did. Okay, that was by accident. Actually, was it? Yeah. And so from here, okay, you bring that back. Perfect. Well, yeah. Okay. So the big thing with React query or TAN stack query in particular is it's your tool. It doesn't require additional dependencies. Just go to npm install and get it going. And the best part about it is it's not going to dictate how you must do things. It only really cares about the information that you retrieve and how you're going to end up utilizing. That's it. When I originally made this talk, and I just realized I left this in the notes, so I'm going to go ahead and use it because why not? When I originally made this talk, I was super nervous about it for whatever reason. And I was operating on 3 hours of sleep. And in my sleep deprived state, I added some jokes. And so you will suffer through them with me. Why did the React query hook break up with its partner? Because it doesn't require any dependencies. That kills at the Redux conference, I'm just saying. All right, so what is state management, right? So I kind of want to break this down. State management, and for a very basic example to kind of conceptualize this a little bit, think of it like a scoreboard at a sports game. So football game, basketball game, soccer, football, depending where you're on in the world, you may call it that. The scoreboard displays several pieces of information that has to be updated. So we're talking about the scores, the remaining time, the home team versus the away team, et cetera, right? As each team scores, the score must be updated in real time. You can't have the old score there for the attendees to see and think that the score is still behind, right? In an app, very similar updates need to happen in real time. So for an example, if you have an e-commerce store and you add an item to the cart, once you add that item, the state of that cart just changed. It went from 0 items to 1. So you need to be able to handle that in real time. And so state management is about tracking the changes to reflect the app, to reflect on the app, to ensure that the user is seeing accurate information at the right time. And so state management, the data of an application will determine how the application works and the info it outputs. State management is the managing of the state of the current values of various variables and data structures. So some examples of this could be form handling, shopping carts, users logging in, and things like that. And for reference point, this is Tanner Lindsley. He actually created TAN stack query, and he's also the co-founder of a company, Nozzle.io. He's head of UI, UX, and DX as well. Those are emphases within his career. And TAN stack query follows something in particular, and it follows the stale while revalidate logic. And so, yeah, I'll add this in here. So Tanner said something that really resonated with me. And this is actually what really like connected me with a lot of the meaning behind this application. He didn't build TAN stack query or React query because he just thought, I'm an authority on this. Like nobody in the world can do this better than me. He had his startup at the time, Nozzle.io, and he had a problem that he needed to solve. Instead of going and patching together 13 different solutions to kind of get the solution he needed. He just started creating it. And for me, that's like one of the biggest meanings of being a developer anyways. Like, we're problem solvers at the end of the day. We're not just memorizing syntax to regurgitate it. We're using it as a delivery mechanism for our solutions, and he needed a solution that he delivered for himself. And he actually created this as an open source project, just kind of shared it in public. Next thing you know, it became one of the biggest open source initiatives. There's a massive community behind it. And so because of that, and because of that solution, he ended up creating this thing that companies all over the world are starting to utilize. And so going back now with that information, the stale while revalidate logic means it will fetch information and it will keep it as long as it's valid or there as stale information. And as it refetches in the background, it will still serve that original version of that information as the background thing happens. So you won't see like a loading state every single time you refetch, or you won't see missing information as the API is being called, especially when you're talking about developing world countries or areas with slower internet. This is a massive value add, because oftentimes with certain applications, they may not see anything on the screen. And studies have shown that the longer, and this is a big reason why you have, lighthouse scores, right? The longer it takes for a user to actually see information on the website, it can be a deterrent for them actually staying on the website or completing the task. And so, especially when we're talking about the checkout process of an application, right? That's not the place where you want to start losing people, simply because your application is taking too long to fetch information, right? So having that, if it fetches it the first time, it now has a stale version of that information, and it will serve that every single time as it's revalidating. And if it gets updated, it will serve the new version of that information. All right. And going from there, what are some of the biggest advantages of tan-stack query? And so number one, obviously we just kind of talked about it, stale while revalidate. It's serving users information as up-to-date as possible, but cached versions of it. It will serve the cached version while it refetches what's needed. The other cool thing with this, you can actually refetch information based on several different events. So you can refetch information whenever they focus on a certain window, or you can actually set up timing for your cache to invalidate. So maybe you set it for 5 minutes. Maybe if a user lands on this page, nothing's going to change within 5 minutes. So we can serve them the same information without having to even worry about possibly refetching it, which can also help, honestly, in preventing massive reoccurring API calls. So let's say, for example, you have a catalog on your website full of products. Those products aren't changing every 2-3 minutes. So it doesn't matter if you just store 5-minute-old versions of the product description and the images and the names. You can fetch that all at one time, serve it, prevent all those massive API calls going back and forth again, getting that information. Prefetching data is another benefit. Maybe you already know, maybe you already know what the user is going to need. So you can, especially if they're getting to a certain part of your website, you can kind of predict what they need. So you can prefetch a lot of that data beforehand. So that way you can kind of have the API loading in the background, serving all that information and storing it, instead of the user actually landing on that page and then waiting and seeing that delay. So, one prime example of that is if they're going to a sign-up page, you kind of already know that they're going to see certain information there, like what are some of the sign-up requirements, et cetera, et cetera. You can prefetch that before they make it to a certain part of that funnel for that sign-up process. The other one is, we kind of covered this slightly, query deduplication. So again, stopping redundant API calls for the same data, right? So you can kind of reduce that there. You can set up automatic caching, which is something that I kind of alluded to earlier. Maybe you're not necessarily the most informed individual when it comes to browser caching. So you can set up automatic caching instead of trying to do this yourself. This will cache things automatically without requiring you to have to take extra steps. It can absolutely help in increasing the overall performance of your application. Also, there are very convenient hooks when it comes to React Query. You have like the use query hook, use mutation hook, pagination, etc. You can also access errors directly through a use query hook instead of having to go for them separately on your own. And so some examples of that, obviously, let's look at some code. So how to query. So what is a query? A query is a way to actually fetch data from an API or an external source like a database. It is a declarative way to fetch the data. And so how do you use a query? Number one, you use the use query hook, which we have here. So we have our const, and we have the items that we're destructing from a use query. We have our query key, which is repo data. And inside this, I just realized I missed a bracket there, but we have our query function. And we're, like I said before, React query doesn't necessarily care how you're getting it. So I'm using Axios here. You can use fetch or whatever it is that you want to utilize. And I'm getting it, and I'm just using a fake store API to get information for this example here. And then we're getting the response. So now, within those hooks, we see we have it is loading. So if it's loading, instead of just returning no state, we can return the loading state or the loading message. So that way the user knows something's happening. Obviously, you can get very creative with that, have maybe a loading spinner showcase or something along those lines. And if there's an error, then something messed up, I want to showcase whatever that error may be, or at least be notified it myself and have a backup use case for if an error is there. What are mutations? Right, this is where we start getting involved a little bit. Mutations, it updates the data in the cache and are typically used for CRUD actions or performing actions server-side. TK Dodo, who's one of the lead maintainers for React Query or Tanstack Query, he describes mutations as, generally speaking, mutations are functions that have a side effect. A mutation can only be in one of the following states at any given moment: is idle, is pending, is error, or is success. It cannot be in multiple states at any given time. It will always only be in one. After a mutation completes, it will trigger a refetch and it invalidates the original use query cache, getting you the latest information. So anytime, one prime example is like a CRUD operation, or if we're getting new information at that time based on something like that. So given the example here, we're using a use mutation. We're using it based on a new employee. So we're posting that information to our database in this example. And on success, meaning once that's successfully sent, we will then invalidate our previous queries to get the new information at that real time. All right, cache invalidation. Invalidating the cache is easier to do with React Query, but knowing when to do it is actually one of the biggest challenges for a lot of people. And what's funny is I've seen TK Dodo himself, he does live streams and he does a lot on Twitter and Twitch and things like that. And he talks about this pretty frequently because a lot of people end up having confusion in this regard. So we can kind of explain this here. Caching is a way to store data that has been fetched from the API. This data can be reused, so you can reduce the number of requests being sent. When a request is made, Tanstack Query first checks to see if the data is already cached. So if you're making that request and it sees that the cache is empty, it will request the data, but if it sees that cache is there, it will just negate the call, so that way you can kind of just tap into that cached information first. This can lead to improved performance, obviously, reduced load on the service because less calls overall, and a better user experience. This is going to be a lot faster. Cache invalidation is the process of removing stale data from the cache, data that is no longer up to date. Why did the React Query hook go to therapy? Because it was always invalidating itself and it needed some real self-validation. I know. You love it, it's true. All right. An example of a great time to invalidate the cache is during a CRUD operation. So create, updating, and deleting records so you can have some that are accurate and more up-to-date, especially when you were talking about a user, let's say, that just created a purchase. We'd want that real information in real time because they want to see the confirmation that the purchase went through. They want to make sure that their credit card information went through, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, we have a twofer on this slide. How does the React Query dev deal with being rejected for things? It doesn't take it personally. It just invalidates the issues and tries again. Yeah, that was killer. So you should have a basic understanding of how to use React Query. You could actually honestly start using it within the next few moments. If you get home or you get excited about it, try it out. And to be honest, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. And now that your life has become easier because of Tanstack Query, you have extra time to go learn advanced generic patterns in TypeScript. Yay. We all love that. But outside of that, I'm Danny Thompson. Thank you. Oh, matter of fact, I will keep sharing. So one thing that we do at the end of our meetups, sorry it's over with, but we always take a group photo. My screen is still sharing. Oh, I got it. That's the thing. So if you want, especially those online, if you want to be in the photo, please turn on your cameras. I'll share that on the big screen here with us. And if you feel comfortable, please come to the front. We'll take a big group photo and then you can kind of network for a little bit before we have to vacate the room. So anyone online, if you want to be a part of the photo, you can just turn on your camera real fast and outside of that.
That was a personal attack on you. No, I
No, 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 no.
appreciate it. No, I appreciate it.
Let's see, gallery. All right.
Places on the back, tall guy.
Yeah. Oh, it won't let them. Interesting. Let's see. Give me 1 second. That's interesting. Security. Start video. All right, can you try now online? You should be able to. There we go. Chris. All right, let's see. So we will, yeah, I got it now. So we'll hide the non-video participants so that way, oh, we can actually still show it. And we will put this on that screen. Hold on. You're on the. Maximize that. All right, perfect. Okay, I'm here.
Do you want to be in the photo, or do you want me to use your phone to take it, or? I don't want to have. Right. The trees.
Oh, yes, yeah, and it happened. Didn't notice it.